Good morning. I'm Shad Beebe from Rail 3 Ranch. My wife, Sam, and daughter, Pecos, John, and Logan, our sons. We've been here in the Florence area for about 9 years now. I was born in Arizona. My wife and I moved to Oklahoma. We're there 20 years. We ranched out there, had a small cow herd, but mainly we were a stocker feeder outfit. We owned a ranch and leased 10 other ranches. We finally got the chance to buy the England ranch here south of town, and we've been there for the last 9 years. Since then, we managed the Depot Ranch south of there, and we're partners on the Balkan Ranch, which is over by Eloy. We're basically cow-calf. We run beef master cows on half of the ranch with Hereford and Charolais bulls to get the hybrid vigor. And those of you that don't know what hybrid vigor is, the cross of the two, you basically get the best of each breed. So we get the weight gain and the maternal traits, the beef master and the Hereford, and the weight gain of the Charolais. When we have, we stock about 50%. We live in the Sonoran Desert. A drought is just a very common thing. So we stock our ranches at about 50%. So when it is bad, we're not in trouble. When it's good, then we'll add some yearlings, and most of those yearlings usually will come from Mexico. They'll come through the quarantine system at the borders. The Mexican cattle have really, they've upgraded them so much in the last 20 years. So they get here and they really do well on the desert. We'll keep them probably, anywhere, depending on the year. Everything always depends on the rain, but depending on the year, we'll keep them from 75 to 100 days and get about anywhere from 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds a day gain. And then the people that own those cattle will pay us X amount of dollars per pound that they gain. Our cows, we try to keep it in a pretty tight calving window. We turn the bulls out the 1st of March, 1st to the 15th of March, somewhere in there, and we'll leave them on for about 4 to 4.5 months. And we do that. I want them cows to calve about a month before it greens up, and then they calve. They're living off of the fat that they've put on, and then when the green up starts, then that will spark those cows to cycle. And so that first 60 days of the green really helps those cows cycle. The vaccination program is huge. I didn't get to see and hear what the vet said, but I'm sure he's very, very well versed in all that. Vaccination is huge, and I'm not talking about antibiotics. I'm talking about your vaccinations, your IBR, your BVDs, and all the things that help keep your cows healthy. Keeping those cows, get the Vibrio, the Lepto, all that stuff out of those cows, and building antibodies in those calves is a huge thing to build immunity in your calf before he even hits the ground. And then, like our calves, at branding time, we vaccinate those calves to boost their immunity. They'll get a black leg, they get the IBRs, the BVDs, the PI3s, and we also use a product called Vita Charge that is just a high dose of vitamins and minerals. Really helps take the stress out of them and calms the acids in their stomach. Stress is huge in gain and performance. If you got stress, you're going to have sickness, and I really believe stress is the beginning part of any kind of disease. You get the stress, then anything can attack them. Our bulls, we trick test our bulls every year, vaccinate our bulls, and trick test them and semen test them. There's a germ called trick, and I don't know the exact name. You can, what is it, trichomoniasis? Trichomoniasis, okay. It's a terrible thing. It's basically a venereal disease. Am I right about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the cows will cycle, breed, and they'll stay bred for a month or two, and then abort. And you don't know you have a problem until fall comes when you pregnancy test your cows. So we stay very, very sharp on the trick test on those bulls. Basically, there's 3 essential things for a rancher in the cattle deal. There's herd health, genetics, and nutrition. Herd health meaning your shot program, keeping those things vaccinated, keeping them warm, keeping them clean. Nutrition, we use a product out of Wilcox. It's a 27% protein with a vitamin packet in it. It's been a great asset to us to keep our cows healthy. We've gone through some bad droughts with this product and come through it very well. Obviously, the feed they've got to eat, the cow's needs to consume at least 3% of her body weight a day. That's when you got a big cow, that's a lot of pounds. So you've got to have the feed in front of them. And if you're overgrazing your ranches, you're cutting your own throat. Just because pretty soon your cows are backing up, their breed up's worse, the calves are not weaning well. Genetics. It doesn't really seem to matter that much, I shouldn't say it doesn't seem to matter. It does matter. When you have the genetics to take that raw forage that comes from the earth and produce it and produce red meat, the better your genetics, the better those cattle are going to do. And then when they go onto the feed yard, it really, really shows up. Here in Arizona, on the desert range, it's not the Angus or the continent or the English breeds. They struggle a little bit more than the crossbreds, the Brahmins, stuff like that can handle the heat, the long distances, the droughts. But what we've been doing is crossing those better genetics with the Brahmin cross breeds, and so we get a little better result on the desert. Now you take those other cattle, the English kind of cattle, very, very good cattle, you move them to a place that's easier conditions. Those cattle really, really do well, and they do extremely good in the feed yards.
So Shad, when you're talking about better genetics, what kind of pointers can you give, I guess, these individuals for how you select your better genetics?
Using the EPDs, which is it's a huge tool in their production, and there's EPDs for every kind of breed. I'm going to say say like we use the Charolais bulls, and there's a little different EPD scale for every kind of breed. So you just kind of figure out what those scales are and find out what traits you want to enhance in your cattle. Stockmanship, going back to the stress, stockmanship is huge. You can make a healthy calf sick like that if you stress them, and so we do almost everything on our horses just because it's such a huge area. If we didn't do it on horses, we could not get it done. So we ride good horses. Our horsemanship, we really work on our horsemanship. In turn, that horsemanship rolls over into our stockmanship, so we can do a better job handling our cattle. Keeping our cattle calm, keeping them gentle, keeping them manageable. We use dogs, and we have very good dogs. If a dog is too rough, he's out. Our dogs trail, they hold cattle up, they help us drive. There's parts of the ranch that are really, really thick with trees, lots of cactus, and without them dogs, we can't hardly get it done. So, and our dogs are not. Our dogs do not bite. If they're biting, they're out. Weather is huge, which everybody here knows. I mean, we live in the Sonoran Desert, and probably, I'm gonna say at least 50% of the year, we're in some sort of a drought. We basically have, it's in the 9 years we've been here, we've had probably 3 really good years. We've had 3 decent years, and we've had 3 terrible years. So you have to, and that kind of goes back to our 50% stocking rate. It just helps us when we do have one of them bad years coming, which we will always have a bad year coming. It just helps us be prepared for that. We leave more feed on the ground, which helps those cows get through the bad times. That more feed on the ground also helps with erosion. If you strip the land off and there's nothing there for that to slow that water down when the water does come, it's just going to run, cause erosion, and it will just continually get worse. Our grazing practices, like I said, the 50% grazing, we try to rotate our cattle around to different areas. If it's getting pretty short in one area, we'll move them off somewhere else. If we think, even with the 50%, if we think that's too much, then we'll pull some cows out of there. But when it's really good, when the good years come, we're basically, when the good years come, it's fillery and Indian wheat and patota and stuff like that, mesquite beans, and so we'll add more cattle at that time. And through the state of Arizona, we apply for additional AUMs, and that'll allow us to use that feed that's there and make a little extra income. Drought insurance. Without drought insurance, we'd be in trouble, because majority of the time we're in drought. And so when it is tough, when we're having to buy extra protein, do this, do that, sell some cows and when you sell the cows in the drought, you're going to take a loss, because everybody's in a drought. So supply and demand, there's more cattle coming to the sale barn, more supply, less demand. So that drought insurance helps offset those expenses. Erosion, like I said, it's a lot of erosion is man-made. I really believe that. If you strip that land off and you're taking all that topsoil off, taking the cover off to slow that water down, you're going to get erosion. Another thing that really causes erosion is people driving off the roads, driving across the deserts, going across there on their quads, making ditches, driving. When it rains, everybody in town's out of work, they go to the desert and they drive in the mud, and it just drives me crazy, because wherever they drive in that mud, the next time it rains, the water's going to follow that track, and this year it's 1 inch, 2 years it's 2 inches, and pretty soon it's this deep, and the water that used to sheet across the land and water all that forage now runs in one line straight down to another ditch, and the water just diverts and leaves your ranch, and it does you no good. So soil conservation is huge. I mean, there's only so much topsoil, and when we strip it off, we're in trouble. The one good thing about the drought this last year was we cleaned out 21 huge dirt tanks that hadn't been cleaned in probably 20 to 40 years. That's talking to the old timers that have been around those ranches that have not seen those tanks dry, and you've got to get them dry enough that the equipment can get in there and clean them out. But this last year it was plenty dry, and we cleaned out a lot of tanks, which was a great thing. We got a lot more capacity. Part of the tanks did very, very well. Part of the tanks with the new open bottoms, they haven't sealed, and so we're going to have to put something in there to help seal them, or over time with some more silt washing in there and the cattle tromping it down, it'll eventually seal back up. But right now, probably half of our tanks are leaching out pretty fast. But it had to happen because they were completely full of silt from X amount of years. And it was really interesting, while those guys were cleaning those tanks, you could see every flood that came into that tank. There was just a little, say probably anywhere from an inch to 6 inches layer, and then there'd be a line, and then the next flood. It was very, very neat to look at. We hauled on the Balcom Ranch, we hauled 1.1 million gallons of water this last year. On the deep well, we hauled right at 500,000 gallons of water, just to help to keep the cattle going, to keep the wildlife going. If we did not haul that water, all the cattle would have had to leave. The wildlife, you know, I'm sure some of the rabbits and the turtles might have made it, but the deer, javelina, anything that's got to have a drink every day, they would have to leave. And where are they going to go? They got to go to the next rancher that is providing water, or to the Gila River, or somewhere. The hunters, most hunters do realize, part of the hunters do not realize, if it wasn't for ranchers, there would be very, very little water on this desert, and very, very little wildlife. The other thing about the tanks, part of the ones as they're drying up, the deer, the javelina, the cattle, everything, that is very boggy. And there's some of them tanks we cleaned out over 25 feet of sediment. Well, that sediment is very, very boggy, and it's very dangerous. When them cattle are trying to get out there to that water that's out there quite a ways in the mud, it's very easy to kill animals in that stuff. Because they get out there, they're so thirsty, they gotta have a drink, and they climb out in that thing and they ain't getting out. Our dirt tanks are pipelines. We've been working with NRCS through the EQIP program to put in pipelines and drill wells and make more of a dependable water source spread across our deserts. We've put in over 15 miles of pipeline stemming from wells that we drilled and 2 big water troughs and storage tanks. It's been a huge, huge help. And the other thing about the water, spreading that water out, it spreads the cattle out. If you just have a few sources of water spread out over your desert, those cattle, deer, everything congregates at that spot. Well, when they leave there, they're only going to go as far as they have to get something to eat. So the closer you are to the water, the more overgrazed it is. The farther out you get, the more forage you're going to get. So the more we can spread that water out over say, we basically take care of 200 square miles of land. If the more we can scatter that out, the more use we can get out of the land, and the better we can take care of the land, the better the cattle are going to do, the better the deer are going to do, better than all the wildlife's going to do. We have a couple spots on the CAP canal where we can pump water out of it. Just about 2 months ago, the Secretary of Interior declared a Tier 1 drought, and he cut all our water off. So, I mean, that really, really hurt. And the ranchers and Arizona Farm and Ranch Group are working with them to get something changed there. That canal water provides water to a humongous amount of land, and not only for cattle but wildlife. So I mean, for every cow there's 10 deer. So you cut the water off for the cow, you cut the water off for 10 deer. So ranching, all these pictures you see, is nice and green, and you're riding around on your horse, and there's cows everywhere. The fact of the matter is, ranching's about 10% cowboy and 90% manual labor. The fences, the pipelines, the tank cleaning, the krells, all the million little pieces that go along with it. The banking, the realtors, the insurance, all the different entities that you have to deal with. There's so many things you got to live with. You know, it's a business of small margins. And you better have your money right. You better have a plan, and not just hoping for rain or hoping you have good prices. Hope is not a financial strategy. You know, we work a lot with the USDA and the FSA. Without those two entities, we would seriously be in trouble. The different programs that the FSA and the USDA have, the infrastructure that we're building with this water system and fencing and stuff like that, we could not do it. The ranch would not pay for it to build that sort of infrastructure. So without those subsidies, we couldn't do it. FSA on drought programs and just the construction programs are huge. The drought insurance, some people call it charity. I do not. We take that money. We're not going and buying boats, and we ain't going on vacations on it. We're putting it back into our ranches. We're putting it back into beef production. Outside income, if you were to just say, okay, I'm going to go buy a ranch today, and you had to go get a loan, buy a ranch, buy the cattle, get the operating expenses, the dollars that you could produce would not work. It will not pay for itself. If you don't have some outside income, it ain't work. So I don't want to paint a gloomy picture there, but that's just the facts of it. Without having help from these other entities, you're in trouble. Unless you come there and you inherit a paid for ranch fully stocked with an expense account, you better have some outside income and know how to operate it when you do get it.
For us, go to North Dakota too. That's usually a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you get into ranching?
You know, my family, they've been ranchers forever. It's just something I've always wanted to do. And maybe, was it the best decision in the world? Maybe not. But it's how we live our life. So we make it work. It's narrow margins. I'm not trying to paint a gloomy picture, because I love our life. I love what we do. You know, I did not go into the military to serve my country that way. I feel like we're serving our country making beef for the United States. So, and exports, you know, to other countries in this world. So, and the beef that we produce versus other countries is the safest beef in the world. Absolutely. Our place where we live down at the deep well is, we're 10 miles from anybody. Our Pepe, the guy that works with us, he lives right there. Other than that, we're 10 miles away from the nearest person. We're completely solar and generated. We have no electricity other than the solar. We like where we live. I really like the idea of the solar system. I mean, we got all the sun in the world, so let's use it. And it is backed up with a generator. When we have cloudy days, then our generators will kick in and help us. We plant a field right around our house that's dry land. It only grows if it's raining on it. And so it's about that tall right now, and it's been about that tall for a month. It ain't going anywhere. So and partly, you know, when it is good, we'll graze our horses on it. When it doesn't, we always try to keep some cover on that farm ground, because I've been there. I've been driving into our place, and you can see this huge dust cloud, and it was our place, and it was uncovered farm ground. And it really, really hit home with me right there how erodible our land is. You know, if it does not have some cover on there, if you're not taking care of that ground, you're going to pay for it. Over at the other ranch at the Balcom, we started a small feed yard there, and we're going to continue doing that, make it better, cleaner. So we've been taking the cattle off the other ranch, which the other ranch is Coriani cattle, and Corianis are a breed of cattle that originated in Mexico, and they came up there very, very hardy. I mean, the drought last year is unreal that ranch over there is not near as good a ranch as the other two. And I seriously doubt very many cows could have survived through that drought that we had last year. These Corriente cows could. What we have done is we have taken the Corriente bulls out of there, and we're a Charlet Corriente cross, and we will eventually replace all the Corriente cows with the half-bloods. And we'd like to go straight English or crossbred, but what we're going to do is keep those half-bloods, and so they still have enough Corriente in them to hustle around that ranch and take the drought and take the rough conditions, but have enough beef genetics to them that we can cross them back on another very good bull and produce a very good beef producing calf. So anyways, the Corrientes, the reason the people that had it before had those is they were in Corriente roping cattle production, and those cattle would go to the rodeos and the ropings, and a lot of our cattle would go to the finale, which they have in Vegas every year. They have very good cattle. The way they did it, they didn't give them, there was no shots, no salt, zero health at all. Those cattle were basically wild animals. And so they evolved into a very efficient cow. I mean, it was survival of the fittest, and the tough ones made it. So they are very, very hardy set of cows. Yes.
Shad, I'm wondering, I'm looking at the pictures there, do your cows browse more than they graze, or they do both, or?
Both, just depending on the time of the year.
It looks pretty dry in a lot of those pictures.
Yeah.
When you do, what months do you supplement with hay or forage? Or?
Well, we're not allowed to supplement on state ground. We can, as far as sustenance, we can provide a protein, and I just leave it out year round. And the cows pick when they need it, they get it. And it's really interesting. They'll go along, and you would think that the conditions are really rough and they won't be eating it. And then there'll be times when there's quite a bit of feed and they'll really eat it. There's different times of year that they know what they need and they go get it. And when they don't need it, they leave it alone. So.
And a lot of those pictures are from branding, so they're in a pen, so there's no grass around it.
So back to the feed yard, we bought a vertical mixer, and basically we'll feed we can use different commodities. I mean, the commodity list is endless. Like right now we're feeding kind of some poor quality hay, one bale of that, one bale of very good alfalfa hay, and then 2 scoops of gin trash, which is very nutritious, that holds it all together. We'll blend that together and make about a 2,500 pound ration. Then I'll add about 300 pounds of water to it just to help with the dust and help hold it all together. We're not trying to make them gain 3 pounds or anything like that. We're just trying to make them steadily gain and hold together. And that's the calves that we have weaned. Those calves that are in the feed yard right now are majority Corriente, so they'll go on and they'll be rodeo cattle. They will stay here for another 30 days and go to a cutting horse training facility up in Rio Verde. They'll stay there for probably 60 days. Those guys will feed them straight alfalfa, and then they'll work their horses on them every day. And the cattle will still gain good on the nutrition and the exercise. With the way they work their horses, it's pretty minimal on the cattle, but basically gives them a little exercise and they generate. My daughter Pecos and I, every year we put on the Belfry Ranch Rodeo right here in town, and this will be our fourth annual. Yeah, and we designed this rodeo basically to be a reunion of the Pinal County ranchers, where all the ranchers can come together for that weekend and just have a good time and eat and visit and watch the rodeo and enter the rodeo if they want to. And our rodeo is a little different than most that you'd see on TV. It's kind of, we have an event called team tying, which was the precursor to team roping, where you roped and you had to get off in time. and then the branch bronc riding, and then another event called the Stray Gathering, which people really like, with 2 teams at a time, and whoever ties theirs down first advances to the next bracket. Anyways, it's a little different kind of rodeo, and we'll add a couple more events this year, but it's just a fun deal. People really liked it. Our family is huge. Without our family, my wife and I could not make this thing work. Our daughter, our son-in-law, our sons, we could not make it all work. And so we're lucky to have them as part of our organization. So we try to maybe go on a vacation every once in a while, or go do something fun, something that's not just work.
I can remember 2 vacations I've ever been on my whole life, so.
Well, some of them were working vacations. So we have started, Pecos and I have also started our meat business. The cows at the other ranch, the Corrini cows, we have started harvesting those and for hamburger and dog food. We take the organs and the offal and everything and make the dog food out of it. The rest of the cow was from the roast to the ribeye. I mean, we put it all in there. So I mean, our hamburger it's not just the junk that doesn't make the steaks. It's the whole cow. Other than the organs, the best part of the cow goes into our hamburger. So we're really excited about that. It's all, we take it to a state inspected facilities, and so everything's square for public consumption. But we're just getting started with that. This last week we started selling it. Pretty excited about it. Anyways, any questions? Yes, sir.
When you put any kind of shot to a cow, how long it takes before it can be eaten or sold?
You know, you just have to go by the label. They'll have a slaughter recommendation on there, and so we follow that.
The last question, do you happen to know why the federal government is charging the water to the ranchers?
Shortening the water to the ranchers because there's no water. The Hoover Dam, the Colorado River is. I flew over it the other day.
No, I'm talking about. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm talking about the mountains out there on like across to New Mexico. I had a friend out there that he leased a big ranch from the government, and well, actually from the state. The federal government came over and tried to charge him for the water, and he don't want to pay for the water because he's renting the property.
Right.
So the federal government came over and took every cow out of his property, took them and sold them. And they threatened him that if they don't cooperate, they were going to confiscate his own property.
Yeah, I can't answer what was going on there.
And that's in Arizona.
Oh, it's in Arizona. Yeah, I just kind of know about our little Pinal County area right here. I mean, we are definitely in a drought, and our water levels are low. I know they've cut our water. The farmers they've cut 30% of their water back because of the Colorado River.
Yeah, that begins from south, out that way, all the way up to, well, there ain't no ice in New Mexico too, but I'm talking about Arizona, go all the way up to the border of New Mexico.
Right. I know, like right there in the Sulphur Springs Valley, they've put in several feed yards in there, and it's unreal the amount of water that they're using right now. Not the amount of water that the cattle are drinking is minimum compared to what it's taken to produce the feed the cattle. So they're drawing those water levels, those aquifers down. So I know that they're limiting people over there. So.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Just
just to give us a general idea, how much does it cost you to haul 1 million gallons, you said, of water for the town?
Oh, gosh, I honestly can't answer that. You know, with our labor and our vehicle expenses and our fuel and just our time, I do not have a number for that. Yeah, but it's plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
When you're talking tanks, are we talking basins, earth basins?
Yes,
or- Okay.
Yeah.
And then do you have any troughs with concrete around them? So
Yeah, I don't know, I don't think all the pictures got on here. Through the EQIP program, we've been building some troughs they're a corrugated metal that are formed to a certain degree angle, and you can make them however big you want. We've got anywhere from 24 footers to 36 foot tanks, and then we put steel in the bottoms of them, and then pour them with one solid pour, and it has an apron around the outside. And like the 36 footer, I think that holds 16,000 gallons. The 24s hold I think they hold about 8,000 gallons. So they're basically a water trough and storage tank all in one. So,
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I saw a conveyor belt that was sprouting barley for a feed source on a small acreage with too many cows. And it was rather, looked very expensive, but it looked rather fascinating
Yeah,
because
I'd like to see
they were
that.
talking about days where it looked like wheatgrass you buy in the store. And, but he was considering trying to provide his own feed rather than buying alfalfa.
I've seen a similar deal like that in a very small scale for people with horses, where they'd have trays and they'd put, say, oats in there and scatter it all out and water it, and in X amount of days it builds like a little mat of sprouts, and you could feed that daily. So I would assume that's similar to what you're talking about.
Where is your hay source? Is it, do you grow your own?
No, we buy our own hay. I want to keep our equipment. I do not want equipment. If it rusts, rent it. Seriously, the majority of equipment that people own get used about 5% of the year, you know, and the rest of the time it sits there and rusts and accrues interest. So we try not to own any equipment. So, I mean, let the farmers farm, let the ranchers ranch. And them guys are better at their job. I'm better at my job. I would just assume pay them.
Sounds like you do have a mixer wagon though. And-
Yeah.
And you feed on a trough when they're come through on a stanchion?
Yes, yeah. Well, we just took over this other ranch over here. Just very, very recently took it over. And so we got so much to do over there. The infrastructure is just a disaster. It has been run down for basically the last 50 years. So we just built a little feeder over there, and we built it very inexpensive. We used telephone poles that the telephone companies have thrown away, put those down, and we've got conveyor belt, and we've nailed it to those poles and tied to the fences. And so it's a stationary feeder that you can't tear up, you can't break it. And I think in probably a 200 and some foot feeder, we got $25 in it, you know, because we got all the materials from different areas that were thrown away. So,
Can you give us any more driving directions for coming to your place after class? And also, do you want us to stop at your wife's store?
yes, if we could go by the store there and then go on down to the ranch.
The Corn Man, is there any label that says it's your company or anything on it?
No, when you turn on Cornman Road, you'll go east, and then you'll finally run into a brand new entryway, and it's pipe overhead with wood,
Okay.
with wood facing there. So Pecos and Sam, and my wife Sam, have Rail 3 Ranch store just down the street here, and they basically do everything is leather. Everything they do came from a cow. They build purses and pillows and books and lampshades and curtains, and you name it. If it has to do with girls, they build it. They don't build saddles, they don't build headstalls and stuff like that. It's all a lot of bags, a lot of stuff like that. Very, very neat stuff. They've been doing it for, my wife started doing it probably 20-some years ago, and it has evolved into what it is today. They go to Las Vegas every year during the national finals and have a booth at the South Point Hotel, and where they have the team roping finale, and there's probably, 100,000 people go through there a year, Vegas?
At least, yeah.
At least 100,000 and go by their booth. So they've done very well there and have built an amazing following. And Pecos with her computer skills, just like last year during COVID, it never slowed down. They canceled South Point, they canceled the trade show. It just went right on because of her social media skills, and they've been very busy with that. And it all goes back to leather. It all goes back to a cow.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned poor quality hay and fine alfalfa. I look at the alfalfa fields around here, it looks like there's not a different herb or weed in them. And you made another comment about how cows know what they need and go after it.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if your poorer hay has some weeds in it that they might prefer than
They sure might.
your alfalfa diet.
Yeah, they sure might. Mhm. If we just fed them straight alfalfa, you know, we're not trying to make them cattle gain 3 pounds a day. We're just trying to maintain them and grow them. Especially like right now with the roping cattle that are in the trail. If we really put the nutrition to them, they would outgrow their horns. The biggest value of those cattle today are their horns, so they can be roped. So if them things are gaining 2-3 pounds a day, they're gonna get so big, their horns cannot keep up with the weight of their body. Yes.
I really enjoyed listening to, especially your comment on hope is not a financial plan. So can you break down like a little bit more of your business and the distribution of your cattle, like what you take to market versus what you take to these stuffed, herding and roping practices? So what are your different avenues and streams of income?
Well, so there's basically about 4 different ways you can market cattle. You can take them to the sale barn, you can sell them over the internet, you can sell them on the video auctions, or you can sell them private treaty. Basically our roping cattle, we sell private treaty. Our better cattle, the Beefmaster, Charolais, Herbert crosses, those are going to go either through the sale barn down here at Marana. We've got a really good following down there because people have bought our cattle, taken them to the feed yards, and those cattle performed. So we've got a really good following there. And then we've also sold them on the video sales, which basically comes from a following also. In the beginning, they didn't know us, they didn't know our cattle, but once they got started, they're like, okay, those cattle work. So we've had a following built that way.